address your House. I was first elected as a British Member of Parliament 28 years ago, and I really appreciate the significance of being offered the rare privilege of speaking to a Parliament. We are very proud of our deep historic links with Somaliland, and since I arrived in government in May last year, I've met a large number of Somalilanders, many in the UK, and I'll come on to that in a moment, but I've been consistently impressed by the commitment of Somalilanders to peace and development in the Horn of Africa. So I'm delighted to be here, to be able to build on the visit to Hargeysa in February of my colleague, the UK Secretary of State for International Development, Andrew Mitchell. I know he was particularly moved and honoured to visit the Commonwealth War Cemetery. I was also very honoured to welcome your President, Solano, to London earlier this year, and I've just come from a very productive, successful meeting with him. I'm also delighted that our naval vessel, Cardigan Bay, recently paid a courtesy visit to Somaliland. I couldn't speak here today in the Horn of Africa without mentioning the terrible crisis which is afflicting this region, including obviously Somaliland, but in particular southern Somalia, where men, women and children are dying of starvation. But a famine has been declared shows just how grave the situation has become. It's a tragedy of global significance, but even in the 21st century, famine once again stalks this region. Britain is playing a leading role in providing life-saving emergency assistance for more than 2 million people, including 500,000 people in Somalia. Where Britain has led, others must now follow and help get assistance to those who desperately need it. I'd like to pay tribute to those in Somaliland who are supporting their fellow Somalis in their hour of need. Such partnership strengthens the foundations for reinforcing regional stability and shows again the importance of both regional ties and building greater stability in Somalia. In my time as Minister for Africa, I've led a thorough review of the UK's Somali strategy and how we work with others to achieve our shared objectives of strengthening peace building and governance and on reinforcing areas of stability. This includes increasing our support for Somaliland, building on our strong relationship and existing links, but also support for other emerging stable areas across Somalia. In June last year, Somaliland demonstrated that it was able to conduct successful and democratic elections. In doing so, Somaliland set an example for others to follow. In a continent where all too often those who lose elections refuse to leave office, Somaliland has shown that the transfer of power, greater democracy and stable government are possible. I welcome the recent efforts of your government to engage with the clans in the Sul, Sanag and Ain region and urge them to continue to mediate for peace. But we must remember that credible elections, although essential, are only part of the democratic landscape. Credible elections must be fortified by strong, independent and accountable institutions, transparent political processes, the rule of law and human rights. Democracy also requires committed individuals, both politicians and citizens. As we have seen in Somaliland, the power of citizens, including the valuable participation of women, can drive change, peace and stability. Building on this platform, Somaliland has an important role in mitigating the threats of terrorism and piracy. These threats impact on the security of all Somalis across the Horn of Africa, as well as the UK. For example, the Gulf of Aden trade artery is a key strategic global interest, and it's been estimated that piracy off the Horn of Africa is costing the world economy over $7 billion. Therefore, it's imperative to keep the sea lanes open and trade flowing. In our interconnected world, tackling these issues at their roots safeguards all of our security and prosperity. I was grateful for the Foreign Minister's participation at a conference held at Wilton Park in the UK earlier this year to discuss a coherent international approach that supports the Somali-led process to resolve the conflict in Somalia. Only with such positive and constructive engagement can Somaliland influence the international community on issues of regional importance. Somaliland's engagement with other Somali administrations can only strengthen stability, promote peace and reconciliation, and reinforce stronger social and economic ties. It's just this sort of engagement that makes me ever more determined to build a more mature relationship between the UK and Somaliland that can help Somaliland achieve greater stability and accountability. And how are we helping, Mr. Deputy Speaker? How are we helping Somaliland to achieve this? Firstly, as my colleague Andrew Mitchell announced during his visit, UK development assistance to Somaliland will quadruple over the next 4 years. This includes helping to support long-term prospects for job creation and improving the climate for investment. Developing investment opportunities is a key element in promoting stability. When I met President Solano earlier this morning, we agreed to cooperate on increasing inward investment and build on the discussions we had a few months back. Our government wants to help Somaliland develop and inject new energy into partnerships that build growth. And it was on this basis that we hosted a Somaliland investment conference in London in March, and this highlighted the long-term opportunities to potential investors. But we also need to ensure that there is the right and stable environment for sustainable inward investment. That's why our government has committed over 100 million sterling over the next 4 years, obviously subject to results, but this will be focused on supporting governance reforms, improving access to justice, assisting vulnerable Somalis, and helping to build local areas of stability that are able to resist the influence of extremist groups and conflict. Improved governance is vital for consolidating gains in economic growth and prosperity. Perceptions of political instability inevitably have an impact on investor confidence. The Somaliland's government's continued commitment to strengthen its capability and accountability and to respect the democratic will of the majority will be important for the country's democratic and economic prospects. Deploying wealth equitably through society will also be an essential strand to ensure long-term prosperity. Mr. Deputy Speaker, political accountability is important in this respect. We will continue to support efforts to make elections credible and contribute to election monitoring directly. I'm very pleased that the President intends to take forward the National Electoral Commission Consultative Committee's recent recommendation to open up the political space to include more political associations in the next 18 months. We recognise, of course, the best way for Somaliland to develop, as I've set out, is to continue to dovetail stronger political transparency with greater private sector development, trade and investment. The UK government believes passionately in the power of global business, and British business can make a vital contribution here, and we'll do all we can to foster future commercial ties and to open up trade and investment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, your private sector can be a force for stability, and we have seen the power of citizens, including the valuable participation of women, to drive change, peace and stability, and to drive it forward. I will say a quick word about the Somaliland diaspora in the UK. They're incredibly loyal and patriotic to both our countries. Many have made a very significant contribution to the UK and to our society. Many are exceptionally entrepreneurial and ambitious, and are delighted that many want to look for opportunities in Somaliland. Among these long-term opportunities for investors lie in the mining and oil sectors. But these are only likely to be realised if the right legislative framework is put in place and the obstacles to investment overcome. I'm confident, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that with the help of the UK, the international community, and most importantly the will of the people, you can achieve the long-term peace and prosperity that Somaliland and this region rightly deserves. In a troubled world and an even more troubled region, Somaliland stands out as a beacon of hope. We salute your remarkable progress, and you have my commitment today that we want to be your partner of choice. The UK wants to be your partner of choice. And you have my pledge that we will always... And you have, Mr. Deputy Speaker, my pledge that we'll always stand shoulder to shoulder with Somaliland. Thank you.
Thank you very, very, very much. On behalf of House of Representatives, we are very welcoming to Minister of